Okay, we're going to talk about hashes. Hashes, hash is one of the most important class in Ruby, and it's used quite a bit in the Rails as well. So here I'm looking at ruby.org, and I can go to hash and look up what this is. As you can see, it has lots and lots of functions. Well, I guess not as many as array, but it has quite a bit of functions. And before you get overwhelmed reading all the documentation, let me just kind of show you how it works. So hash works a lot like an array. So this is an example of a hash. Hash starts with a bracket, a wiggly bracket, instead of a square bracket. Remember, for arrays we use a square bracket. For hashes we use a wiggly bracket, and then we put a string, and this is considered a key, and that's a value. So this value coding is associated with the key called first name, and we can add multiple values in these hashes. So this is the first key, now that's the second key, and in the second key I associated with the second value called dojo. Okay, so I can echo out or print out the value of that hash associated with that key, and this is going to return coding, that's going to return dojo, and it's going to print that out. Okay, I can also put a if statement. If X last name is equal to dojo, say that your last name is dojo. Alright, so I hope that makes sense. Now I can put a string here for the value. I can put an integer. I can put another array. I can even put another hash as a value for that key. And let's see. Okay, so if I do this and if I run it, then it's gonna say coding. That's the value from X first name, and then X last name dojo, and your last name is like that. Alright, so now let me echo these two lines, and we're going to talk about symbols. Okay, so notice that how I put a string for the key. Now for the key, I can put what's called a symbol, and symbol starts with colon. So colon, and you put the name of the symbol. So symbol is a lot like the string, but remember that string is an object. So if you want to use all the methods that come with a string class, then it makes sense to put the key as a string. But usually on hashes or other things, you don't actually need any of the functions or methods that come with that class, with the class string or whatever. So instead, we just create a very, very lightweight symbol that does not come with any of the methods associated with the class string. So here's another example. Usually values, once we get the value from the hash, we do want to, there are a lot of cases where we want to use associated function associated with the with the class. So okay, I don't know if that's making a lot of sense, but let's look at this example. For example, X last name, that returns a string, right? Dojo. So now because it returns a string, we can call this function equal. That is a method associated with this with the class string. Okay. All right. So with the symbol, again, we're not really going to do any manipulation around the key. Usually we just set the key and we forget it, right? So that's where we use symbols a lot, because we don't need, again, to call any of the functions associated with the class string. Okay, it's just very lightweight, and just if this is confusing, just stick with it, and then it will make a lot more sense. Just kind of think that it's just a lightweight string. Alright, so I can say y is equal to the name of the key is first name, the name of the second key is last name, and I attach that value with that key. I attach that value with the last name. And if I do this, put y is, then, and let me echo out, let me comment out those two lines. Then it says first name coding, last name dojo. It just returns a hash. Okay. If I want to put the value of the first name and the last name, I just put the symbol there, and if I do this, it returns that's the value of y, that's the value of y colon first name, that's the value of y colon last name. Okay, so simple. Again, just consider that to be a very lightweight string that does not come with any of the functions that usually comes with a class string. Alright, so now hash, again, if you look at the documentation, has a lot of different functions. So you don't really need to know all of these functions. But again, I'll teach you some of the fundamental ones, and if you later need some other functions, then you can come back here and play around with this. Alright, so let me comment that out. Okay, so one of the method that you can get familiar with is delete, and it just deletes, and you specify the key name here, and it just deletes that key and the value associated with that key in that hash, and updates the variable. So if I delete the first name key and then now print out what y is, so let me do that and let me specify what y is. So y starts out with first name, and let's uncomment that out. And if I run this, okay, initially y is this, and then we deleted the key first name, and y is now just the last name, and then dojo associated with the key last name. Alright, two other functions that we're going to cover, and then a lot of the iterator function that we're going to talk about, blocks, will be used for hashes and arrays, and we'll talk about some of those in other video. But this one, this is another method associated with the hash class, has key question mark, and if this just means that if y hash has a key called first name, then print this. If it doesn't, then print this. If y has a value called dojo in any of the keys, then echo this out. If not, print this statement. Okay, so has key question, has value question. Those are two good functions to know. Okay, alright, so if I run this, if I save this, and if I run this file, then of course, because it doesn't have the first name, it should print this out. So it should say y does not have a key called first name. Does y have a value called dojo? It still does. So it should have said y has a value called dojo, and that's what it prints out. So just get familiar with if and then statement, and I think that's it. So again, get very familiar with hashes, with symbols, and these two functions. There are a lot of other functions, and you can see that now there will be some overlap, such as empty, equal. A lot of functions have that. Each we'll talk about that in the numerator section. You can merge different hashes. You can reject. We're going to talk about that. Select. We're going to talk about that in the numerator. You can convert it to an array by using toA. You can convert it to a string by calling it to_s, and so forth. So again, no need to understand everything here. But again, if you're trying to do something with a hash and you're not so sure how to do it effectively with the functions that you know, then always come to RubyDoc and see if one of the functions here does what you need. But for now, just get familiar with these functions. Alright, thank you.